My name is Rachel Carter. I am 29 years old. 3 days ago, my mother called to tell me I was not invited to Christmas dinner. Not because there was no room. Not because I lived too far away. Not because of an argument. She said my sister's boyfriend would be meeting the family for the first time, and my presence might make the wrong impression. I stood in the back room of my bakery holding a tray of fresh cinnamon rolls while my mother calmly explained why I should stay away from my own family gathering. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. Olivia wants this night to be special. She does not want people asking questions about you. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. Questions about me? I owned a successful custom cake studio. I paid my own bills. I had not asked my parents for money in over a decade. Yet somehow, I was still the embarrassing daughter. The daughter who worked with flour on her hands instead of designer handbags on her arm. The daughter who spent her mornings decorating wedding cakes while my sister spent hers posting sponsored content online. I wish I could tell you that I argued. I wish I could tell you I finally stood up for myself. Instead, I did what I had been trained to do my entire life. I stayed quiet. I understand, I told her. Then I ended the call. The bakery was silent except for the hum of the refrigerators. I looked around at the shop I had built from nothing. The display cases. The ovens. The holiday orders stacked on my desk. Every inch of this place existed because of years of 14-hour workdays and sacrifices nobody in my family had ever bothered to notice. Yet one phone call from my mother was enough to make me feel 12 years old again. 12 years old and standing in the kitchen while Olivia opened birthday presents. 12 years old and being told to clean up after guests while my sister took family photos. 12 years old and learning that some children are celebrated while others are simply useful. The truth is, this was not the first time my family had pushed me aside. It was simply the first time they had been honest about it. Growing up, there were always different rules for Olivia and me. When she forgot a school project, my parents rushed to help. When I forgot one, I was told to be more responsible. When she got a B, it was because the teacher was unfair. When I got an A, it was because I studied too much and needed to relax. Olivia was the star. I was the support staff. Somewhere along the way, I stopped expecting anything different. Maybe that was my mistake. Because when you accept crumbs for long enough, people start believing you do not deserve a seat at the table. That night, I locked the bakery and drove home through streets covered in Christmas lights. Families were gathering. Restaurants were full. Holiday music floated from shop windows. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. I arrived at my apartment and sat in the dark without turning on a single light. My phone buzzed twice. Once from my sister. Once from my mother. Neither message said they wanted me there. Olivia sent a photo of herself trying on a new dress. Mom sent a picture of the dining room centerpiece. Not one word about the fact that I had just been excluded from Christmas. As if I had already disappeared. As if I had never been part of the family at all. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. The hurt was there. The anger was there too. But underneath both emotions was something else. Exhaustion. I was tired of earning love that never arrived. Tired of proving my worth to people determined not to see it. Tired of being useful when they needed help and invisible when they wanted applause. What I did not know was that Christmas dinner would not go the way my family expected. Because while they were busy introducing Olivia's wealthy boyfriend to the perfect version of the Carter family, that same man would soon be standing at my front door. And when he discovered the truth about me, about my business, and about everything my family had hidden from him, nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, I woke up determined not to let my mother's phone call ruin another week of my life. I had orders to finish, customers counting on me, and a business that demanded my attention. Unfortunately, family memories have a way of following you even when you are trying to move forward. As I unlocked the bakery before sunrise, I found myself thinking about all the years that had led to this moment. Looking back, I should have recognized the pattern much earlier. The favoritism had never been subtle. It was woven into every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. When Olivia wanted dance lessons, my parents paid for them immediately. When she wanted a new car at 16, they somehow found the money. When she decided to become a social media influencer after college, they called her brave and creative. Meanwhile, my dreams always came with conditions. When I told my parents I wanted to attend culinary school, my mother asked why I would waste my grades on baking. My father suggested I find a practical career instead. When I eventually borrowed money, worked 2 jobs, and paid for my own training, they barely acknowledged it. Years later, when I opened my first tiny bakery location, Olivia did not even attend the grand opening. My parents arrived 40 minutes late, stayed for 15 minutes, and spent most of that time talking about one of Olivia's brand partnerships. Yet somehow, despite all of it, I kept trying. I kept showing up. I kept bringing birthday cakes to family parties. I kept buying Christmas gifts. I kept believing that maybe one day they would see me the way I wanted to be seen. The truth was painful. They did see me. They simply saw me differently than they saw Olivia. To them, Olivia was someone to celebrate. I was someone to rely on. There is a huge difference between being loved and being useful. It took me years to understand that. Around noon, my grandmother called. Grandma Rose was the only person in the family who never treated me like an afterthought. "Your mother told me you will not be coming to Christmas dinner," she said immediately. I could hear disappointment in her voice. "I was not invited," I admitted. Silence filled the line. "What do you mean you were not invited?" she asked. I explained everything. The boyfriend. The family image. The concern that I might somehow embarrass my sister. Grandma Rose became unusually quiet. Then she said something that stayed with me. "Rachel, one day people reveal exactly who they are. The hard part is deciding whether you are finally willing to believe them." After we hung up, I could not stop thinking about her words. Maybe my family had been revealing who they were for years. Maybe I had simply been too hopeful to accept it. The bakery became busy that afternoon. Customers picked up holiday orders. Families arrived together, laughing and smiling as they collected cakes and pastries for Christmas celebrations. I smiled politely and congratulated them on their gatherings, but each interaction reminded me that my own family had chosen to exclude me. That evening, after closing the bakery, I returned home exhausted. Out of curiosity, I opened social media. Within seconds, I regretted it. Olivia had already posted photos from a pre-Christmas gathering. My parents stood beside her, smiling proudly. Her boyfriend, Ethan Brooks, appeared in nearly every picture. Hundreds of comments praised their perfect family. Perfect. The word almost made me laugh. Nobody looking at those photos would ever know there was another daughter. Nobody would know that daughter had spent years helping whenever the family needed something. Nobody would know she had been intentionally left out of the celebration. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the couch. For the first time in my life, I began wondering what would happen if I stopped trying. What would happen if I stopped chasing approval that never came? What would happen if I finally accepted that some people are committed to misunderstanding you? The answer scared me because they pointed toward a truth I had spent years avoiding. Maybe the problem was not me. Maybe it never had been. What I did not realize was that while I sat alone in my apartment questioning everything, Ethan Brooks was beginning to notice small inconsistencies in the stories my family told. Tiny details that did not add up. Questions that nobody seemed eager to answer. And before long, those questions would lead him directly to me. Christmas Eve arrived cold and bright. The kind of morning that makes small towns look like postcards. Lights glowed in windows. Wreaths hung from front doors. Families carried gifts into houses filled with laughter and noise. Meanwhile, I stood alone inside my bakery decorating a 3-tier wedding cake that needed to be delivered the following week. Work had always been easier than holidays. Work gave me clear expectations. Holidays came with disappointment. By noon, most businesses on Main Street had closed for the day. Mine remained open for a few extra hours so customers could collect last-minute dessert orders. One by one, they arrived. Parents with children. Grandparents carrying trays of cookies. Couples picking up cakes for family gatherings. Every interaction reminded me what day it was. Every smiling family felt like a mirror reflecting something I did not have. Around 3 o'clock, my final customer left. I locked the bakery door and switched off the display lights. The silence that followed felt heavier than usual. Normally, I would be driving to my parents' house right about now. I would be helping prepare dinner. Setting the table. Decorating desserts. Making sure everything looked perfect. This year, nobody needed me. Or maybe they simply thought they did not. I drove home and changed into comfortable clothes. Then I did something I had never done before. I made Christmas dinner for one. A small roast chicken. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. A single slice of pie from the bakery. Nothing elaborate. Nothing impressive. Just enough. While the food cooked, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages filled the family group chat. Pictures of wrapped gifts. Photos of the dining room. Videos of Olivia laughing with Ethan. Nobody directly mentioned me. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody acknowledged my absence. It was as if everyone had silently agreed to pretend I did not exist. I stared at the screen for several seconds before muting the conversation entirely. Then I set the phone face down and focused on my dinner. For the first time in years, I ate a holiday meal without rushing to clean up after everyone else. There were no demands. No expectations. No criticism disguised as advice. Just peace. Yet the peace felt strange because loneliness sat beside it. Around 7 that evening, Grandma Rose called. "How are you holding up?" she asked. I considered lying. Instead, I told the truth. I am sad, I admitted. But I think I am also starting to see things clearly. Grandma Rose was quiet for a moment. "Clarity can hurt before it heals," she said softly. "Your mother called me earlier." My stomach tightened. What did she say? She wanted sympathy because she feels stressed about hosting. I almost laughed. Of course she does. "Rachel," Grandma Rose continued, "some people become so focused on appearances that they forget relationships are supposed to be real." We talked for nearly an hour. By the time we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in days. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened social media again. Big mistake. Olivia had posted dozens of photos. Ethan sat beside my parents at the dinner table. Everyone smiled as if they were living inside a holiday commercial. Under one photo, Olivia wrote, "Perfect Christmas with the people who matter most." The words hit harder than I expected. The people who matter most. I counted the faces. 4. My parents. Olivia. Ethan. There should have been 5. Instead, I had been edited out before the picture was even taken. I closed the application immediately. What I did not know was that the same photo was causing a very different reaction somewhere else. Because Ethan had started asking questions. Small questions at first. Casual questions. Questions about family history. Questions about childhood memories. Questions about why certain photographs around the house seemed incomplete. And every answer he received raised even more questions. By the end of Christmas night, Ethan Brooks had begun realizing that someone was missing from the Carter family story. The next morning, he would decide to find out why. The morning after Christmas felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I did not wake up exhausted from serving everyone else. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched snow drift across the parking lot outside my apartment. Around 8 o'clock, I headed to the bakery. Several large orders needed attention, and work remained the easiest way to quiet my thoughts. By 10 o'clock, I was alone in the kitchen finishing sugar flowers for a wedding cake when the front door bell chimed. I glanced toward the showroom, expecting an early customer. Instead, I froze. Standing near the entrance was a tall man wearing a dark winter coat. I recognized him immediately from Olivia's social media photos. Ethan Brooks. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked surprised. I looked confused. Finally, he smiled politely. Rachel Carter? Yes. I was hoping to meet you. That was not what I expected to hear. You were? I asked. Ethan nodded. Actually, I have been trying to figure out how to contact you since yesterday. Every alarm bell in my head went off. Why? He looked around the bakery. The display cases. The framed awards on the wall. The photographs of wedding cakes and dessert installations. Then he looked back at me. Because I think someone forgot to tell me the truth. I folded my arms carefully. That is a pretty dramatic opening. To my surprise, he laughed. Fair enough. Then his expression became serious again. Your family told me you worked part-time at a bakery. I blinked. Part-time? That is what I was told. I stared at him for several seconds. Then I looked around the building. Ethan, I own the bakery. Silence. Real silence. The kind that changes the atmosphere in a room. Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. You own it? I opened it 6 years ago. You are serious? I pointed toward a large sign mounted behind the register. Carter Cake Studio. Owner, Rachel Carter. Ethan followed my gesture. The color drained slightly from his face. Nobody mentioned that. Apparently not. He rubbed the back of his neck. Yesterday, I kept hearing references to you. Little comments. Stories from childhood. But every time I asked what you did, the answers were vague. Your sister told me you worked odd jobs. I laughed once. It was not a happy sound. That is one way to describe owning a business with 12 employees. Ethan stared at me. 12 employees? Actually 13 now. He looked genuinely shocked. Not fake shocked. Not polite shocked. Truly shocked. Rachel, this bakery is famous. In this area, yes. My assistant ordered desserts from here last year for a corporate event. Now it was my turn to be surprised. Really? Ethan nodded slowly. They were the best desserts I have ever had. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something clicked in his expression. Wait. His eyes moved across the wall again. You designed all of these? He pointed toward photographs from weddings, charity galas, and luxury events. Yes. Everyone? Yes. Ethan exhaled slowly. Your family made it sound like you barely had a career. There it was. The truth finally spoken aloud by someone outside the family system. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. They have been doing that for a long time, I admitted. Ethan looked genuinely uncomfortable. I think I owe you an apology. For what? For believing them. Before I could answer, the front door opened again. My assistant hurried inside carrying inventory paperwork. She smiled when she saw me. Then she noticed Ethan. Rachel, the event planner from Charleston, called. She wants to confirm the order for the governor's fundraiser. Ethan turned toward me. Slowly. The governor's fundraiser? I closed my eyes for a second. Of course this would happen today. My assistant continued speaking. And the wedding venue wants to know if you can personally oversee the celebrity reception next month. When she finally stopped talking, the bakery became silent again. Ethan looked at me as if he had never met me before. Because in a way, he had not. He had met the version of Rachel Carter my family described. Not the real one. And as he stood there processing everything he had just learned, I realized something important. For the first time in my life, someone was seeing me without my family's filter. The problem was, Ethan was only beginning to uncover the truth. And what he would discover next was far more shocking than a successful bakery. After my assistant disappeared into the office, Ethan remained standing in the center of the bakery as if the floor beneath him had shifted. I could practically see the calculations happening inside his head. Everything my family had told him about me was colliding with the reality surrounding him. Finally, he looked at me and asked the question that mattered. "Can you show me the rest of the bakery?" I hesitated. Normally I kept business and family completely separate. Ethan technically belonged to my family's world. But something about the genuine confusion on his face made me nod. Sure. I led him through the production kitchen. Stainless steel workstations stretched across the room. Industrial mixers lined one wall. Cooling racks filled with holiday orders occupied another. Employees moved confidently through their tasks. Several greeted me by name. Ethan watched everything closely. "How long did it take you to build this?" he asked. 6 years. By yourself? Mostly. At first, I was the baker, accountant, delivery driver, cleaner, and receptionist. He shook his head slowly. That sounds impossible. It felt impossible sometimes. We stopped near a wall covered in framed photographs. Weddings. Charity galas. Corporate events. Celebrity fundraisers. Luxury hotels. Ethan stepped closer to examine them. Wait. He pointed toward a photo. I attended this event. Which one? The Children's Hospital fundraiser in Atlanta. I smiled. We created the dessert installation. Ethan looked at another picture. Then another. His expression grew more stunned with each frame. You did all of these? My team and I. Rachel, these are major events. Yes. These are the kinds of events companies fight to sponsor. I shrugged. We work hard. Ethan stared at a framed newspaper article hanging near the office. Then he read the headline aloud. Rachel Carter named Entrepreneur of the Year. His eyes moved to me. Entrepreneur of the Year? 3 years ago. Your family never mentioned that. Of course they had not. The memory immediately returned. I had won the award at a formal ceremony attended by hundreds of business leaders. My parents left after 30 minutes because Olivia had been invited to an influencer launch party the same night. At the time, I told myself not to take it personally. Looking back, maybe I should have. Ethan continued studying the article. This is unbelievable. What is? How little I knew about you. Before I could answer, my office manager walked into the room carrying a folder. Rachel, the New York client approved the final proposal. She stopped after noticing Ethan. Sorry. It is fine, I said. She handed me the folder. On the cover was a contract worth nearly $200,000. Ethan accidentally caught sight of the number before I closed it. His eyes widened. That is for cakes? Large-scale event services. He laughed softly. Your family made it sound like you struggled to pay rent. I looked away. Sometimes people become attached to outdated versions of you. Ethan grew quiet. Then he asked something unexpected. Rachel, did they intentionally hide all of this from me? I did not answer immediately because the truth felt uncomfortable. I do not know, I said carefully. But they certainly never volunteered the information. Ethan crossed his arms. Yesterday, your sister described you as someone who never really found direction. I almost smiled. Interesting. Rachel, I am serious. So am I. The room fell silent. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice softer this time. Do you know why I came here today? Because you had questions? Partly. He glanced toward the wall of photographs. But there was another reason. Which is, I own Brooks Event Holdings. I froze. The name was instantly familiar. One of the largest event and hospitality groups in the region. Wait. Ethan nodded. 3 of the venues featured in those photographs belong to my company. Suddenly several pieces clicked into place. You are the owner? Majority owner. I thought you worked in finance. He smiled. That is what Olivia told you? We both laughed at the same time. It was the first genuinely relaxed moment of the day. Then Ethan's expression became serious once again. Rachel, I have spent months listening to your family talk about success. Yet the most impressive person I have met since arriving here is someone they barely mention. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were flattering. Because they came from someone with no reason to lie. Someone outside the family system. Someone seeing the situation clearly. Unfortunately for my parents and Olivia, Ethan was still uncovering the truth. Because the next question he asked would expose something far more painful than hidden success. It would reveal why I had not been sitting at the Christmas table in the first place. For a moment, I considered giving Ethan the polite version of the story. The simplified version. The version that would protect everyone involved. Then I remembered Christmas dinner. I remembered being excluded from my own family gathering because my existence was considered inconvenient. Suddenly, protecting people who had never protected me felt unnecessary. You really want to know why I was not invited? I asked. Ethan nodded. I do. I leaned back in my chair and stared through the office window toward the bakery floor. Because Olivia did not want me there. Ethan frowned. That cannot be the whole reason. Actually, it is. Rachel, there has to be more to it. I almost smiled. Outsiders always assume there must be a complicated explanation. The truth is usually much simpler. My sister has spent most of her life competing with me, I said. The difference is that I never realized we were competing. Ethan remained silent. When we were younger, she received all the attention. That never bothered me. Then I started building my business. That is when things changed. Ethan leaned forward slightly. How? Every success became uncomfortable for her. Memories surfaced one after another. The award ceremony she skipped. The bakery opening she ignored. The magazine article she mocked. The television interview she pretended not to see. At the time, each incident felt isolated. Looking back, the pattern was obvious. Whenever something positive happened in my life, she either minimized it or redirected attention back to herself. Ethan's expression darkened. You think she deliberately hid your success from me? I think she preferred the version of me that made her feel superior. The room fell quiet. Ethan looked genuinely troubled. Yesterday she told me you were still trying to figure out your career. I laughed softly. That explains a lot. Rachel, I am serious. So am I. He rubbed his forehead. This does not make sense. It makes perfect sense if you understand the family dynamic. I stood and walked toward a shelf holding old photo albums. Most of them had been given to me by Grandma Rose. I opened one and handed it to Ethan. Page after page showed family milestones. Birthday parties. Graduations. Holidays. One thing quickly became obvious. Olivia stood in the center of almost every photograph. I was usually standing off to the side. Setting tables. Carrying decorations. Holding someone's coat. Ethan flipped through several pages before looking up. This is unbelievable. Keep going. He turned more pages. Then he stopped. There are almost no photos focused on you. Exactly. Why? Because I was never the main event. Ethan stared at the album. Then something seemed to click. The family stories are the same way. What do you mean? Every story they tell revolves around Olivia. Even when you are mentioned, you are presented as supporting cast. Hearing an outsider recognize the pattern felt strangely validating. For years I questioned whether I was imagining things. Whether I was being overly sensitive. Whether I expected too much. Yet Ethan had identified the problem within 48 hours. That realization said more than words ever could. Later that afternoon, Ethan prepared to leave. Before he reached the door, he turned back toward me. "Can I ask one more question?" "Sure. If your family treats you this way, why do you keep showing up?" The question hit harder than expected. I thought about birthdays. Holidays. Family dinners. Years of effort. Years of disappointment. Finally, I answered honestly. Because I kept hoping they would eventually love me the way I loved them. Ethan did not respond immediately. His expression softened. "And do you still believe that will happen?" I looked around the bakery I had built with my own hands. The employees who respected me. The customers who valued my work. The life I had created without family support. Then I thought about Christmas dinner. "I am not sure anymore," I admitted. Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe that is not the worst thing." After he left, I stood alone near the front window watching his car disappear into traffic. For the first time, someone outside the family had seen the truth. The problem for Olivia was that Ethan was not the kind of man who ignored uncomfortable truths. And when he returned to my parents' house later that evening, he started asking questions they were not prepared to answer. The following evening, my phone rang while I was closing the bakery. The caller ID showed Grandma Rose. The moment I answered, I knew something had happened. "Rachel," she said, sounding unusually energized. "You are not going to believe what took place at your parents' house tonight." I locked the front door and leaned against the counter. "That sounds promising." "Ethan came over for dinner." I smiled slightly. I had a feeling he might. Well, apparently he arrived with questions. My smile grew. Questions are dangerous in our family. Grandma Rose laughed. They certainly were tonight. She began telling me everything. According to her, dinner started normally enough. My mother spent most of the evening trying to impress Ethan. Olivia dominated the conversation as usual. My father remained mostly quiet. Then Ethan casually asked how long I had owned the bakery. The room went silent. Your mother apparently answered first, Grandma Rose said. Rachel helps at a bakery, she told him. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. And then? Then Ethan corrected her. I stood upright immediately. He what? He told everyone you owned the bakery. I could almost picture the expressions around the table. Olivia's forced smile. My mother's panic. My father's confusion. What happened next? Nobody knew what to say. I laughed despite myself. That sounds accurate. Grandma Rose continued. Then Ethan mentioned the awards. The magazine articles. The major events. The charity galas. Every sentence felt like a spotlight exposing years of carefully managed family narratives. Olivia tried to downplay everything, Grandma Rose said. Rachel just got lucky, she claimed. Naturally. Ethan did not seem impressed by that explanation. I sat down slowly. For the first time in years, someone was challenging the version of reality my family had always presented. And they were not prepared for it. Then things became even more interesting, Grandma Rose said. How? Ethan asked why you were not invited to Christmas dinner. My heart skipped. What did they say? 3 different answers. I laughed immediately. 3? Your mother blamed scheduling. Olivia blamed miscommunication. Your father claimed he thought you were busy. The fact that nobody could keep their story straight said everything. And Ethan noticed? Immediately. Grandma Rose sounded almost delighted. He asked why everyone had a different explanation. I shook my head. Let me guess. Nobody had an answer. Correct. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then Grandma Rose's voice softened. Rachel, something important happened tonight. What? For the first time, your family was forced to hear the truth spoken out loud. That thought lingered with me. Because she was right. For years, I carried the burden privately. The favoritism. The exclusion. The disappointment. But now an outsider had seen it too. Which meant my family could no longer dismiss everything as imagination or oversensitivity. There is more, Grandma Rose added. Of course there is. After dinner, Ethan spoke privately with your father. That caught my attention. About what? I do not know exactly. But Richard looked shaken afterward. My father was not an emotional man. If he looked shaken, something significant had been said. What do you think happened? I asked. I think someone finally asked him a question he could not avoid. After hanging up, I sat alone in the bakery office thinking about everything I had heard. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt strangely sad. Because none of this should have required an outsider. My family should have recognized my worth years ago. Yet here we were. 48 hours after Christmas. And the first cracks were finally appearing. The next morning, those cracks widened dramatically. Because while I was preparing for another day of work, my father unexpectedly walked into the bakery. And judging by the expression on his face, the conversation he wanted to have was 20 years overdue. When I saw my father's truck pull into the bakery parking lot, I genuinely thought I was imagining things. In 6 years of business ownership, he had never visited. Not once. Yet there he was, slowly stepping out of the vehicle and staring at the building as though he had arrived at the wrong address. I watched through the front window as he approached. Employees greeted customers. Coffee machines hummed. The bakery moved through another busy morning. Meanwhile, my father stood outside looking completely out of place. Finally, I opened the door. Dad. He nodded awkwardly. Rachel. Neither of us seemed sure what came next. After several uncomfortable seconds, I invited him inside. We sat at a small table near the back of the bakery. He looked around constantly. At the display cases. At the employees. At the customers filling the room. You have built something impressive, he said quietly. I almost laughed. Not because the compliment was funny. Because it had arrived about 6 years late. Thank you. My father folded his hands together. I should have come sooner. There it was. The closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he surprised me. Ethan asked me some difficult questions. I heard. He nodded slowly. Questions I did not have good answers for. I studied his face. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Reflective. Uncomfortable. Dad, why are you really here? He exhaled heavily. Because I realized something. What? I do not actually know much about your life. The honesty caught me off guard. What do you mean? I know your birthday. I know where you live. But I do not know how this business works. I do not know your employees. I do not know your accomplishments. His voice grew quieter. I do not even know your favorite cake flavor. That sentence hit harder than any apology could have. Because it was true. My father knew almost nothing about the person I had become. Not because I hid my life. Because nobody bothered to ask. We spent nearly an hour talking. Real talking. Not surface-level conversations. Actual conversations. For the first time, he listened. He asked about the bakery. The employees. The challenges of building a company. The goals I still hoped to achieve. Then, just as I started believing progress might be possible, my phone rang. Olivia. I stared at the screen. Then declined the call. 2 minutes later she called again. Then again. Finally, I answered. What? What did you tell Ethan? She demanded immediately. I closed my eyes. Good morning to you too. Rachel, I am serious. So am I. Her voice rose. Ever since he visited your bakery, he has been acting completely different. My father sat silently across the table listening. Olivia, I did not tell Ethan anything. Do not lie to me. He asked questions. I answered them. You embarrassed me. That sentence changed everything. Not because it surprised me. Because it confirmed exactly what I had suspected for years. Olivia was not upset about the truth. She was upset about losing control of the narrative. No, I replied calmly. You embarrassed yourself. Silence. Then she hung up. My father looked stunned. She actually said that? Yes. He leaned back slowly. For the first time, I watched him confront reality without excuses. Without explanations. Without pretending everything was fine. That afternoon, events moved even faster. Around 3 o'clock, Ethan arrived at the bakery again. This time he looked determined. Do you have a minute? He asked. Sure. We stepped into my office. Ethan closed the door behind him. I ended things with Olivia. I stared at him. What? This morning. Because of me? No, his answer came instantly. Because of what I learned about her. Ethan sat down. Rachel, successful people do not scare me. Honest people do not scare me. What scares me are people willing to rewrite reality to protect their image. The room became very quiet. I spent months building a relationship with someone who constantly minimized another person to make herself look better, he continued. That is not the kind of partner I want. I did not know what to say. Ethan smiled slightly. There is one more thing. What now? Brooks Event Holdings is expanding. I immediately became suspicious. Ethan. Hear me out. Ethan. He laughed. We need an exclusive luxury dessert partner for several properties. My eyes widened. You are serious? Completely. He slid a business proposal across the desk. The numbers were larger than any contract my company had ever received. Suddenly I understood. Christmas had been the beginning, not the ending. The family that spent years pushing me aside was finally losing control of the story. And this was only the first consequence. 6 months later, I stood inside the newest expansion of Carter Cake Studio watching employees prepare for another major event. The bakery had grown beyond anything I imagined when I first rented a tiny storefront and worked 16-hour days by myself. The partnership with Brooks Event Holdings transformed everything. Our desserts now appeared in luxury hotels, corporate galas, charity fundraisers, and wedding venues throughout multiple states. Revenue doubled. Then doubled again. We hired more staff, expanded operations, and opened a second location. Yet the most important change had nothing to do with business. For the first time in my life, I stopped measuring my worth through my family's approval. That freedom changed everything. The months following Christmas were difficult for the Carter family. Ethan's breakup with Olivia forced conversations everyone had spent years avoiding. My mother initially blamed everyone except herself. Ethan. Me. Circumstances. Bad timing. Anyone but the people responsible. Unfortunately for her, reality became harder to deny. Especially after Grandma Rose started speaking openly about years of favoritism. Family members who once ignored the issue began noticing it too. My father changed the most. He started visiting the bakery regularly. At first the visits felt awkward. We were essentially getting to know each other for the first time. But slowly, something genuine developed. He attended business events. Asked questions. Learned employee names. Showed interest. Not because he wanted something. Because he finally understood what he almost lost. One afternoon he surprised me with a simple statement. I spent years being proud of the wrong things. I knew exactly what he meant. Olivia struggled the most. Without Ethan's constant support and without complete control of the family narrative, she was forced to confront uncomfortable truths. We never became close. Some damage takes longer to heal. But eventually the hostility faded. Not because everything was fixed. Because I stopped participating in the competition she imagined existed between us. You cannot compete with someone who refuses to enter the race. As for my mother, progress came slowly. Very slowly. There were apologies. Some sincere. Some less convincing. I accepted what felt genuine and ignored what did not. Forgiveness does not require pretending the past never happened. It simply means refusing to let the past control your future. The most surprising part of the story came from Grandma Rose. One afternoon she visited the bakery and handed me a small box. Inside were dozens of old photographs. Pictures of me decorating my first cakes. Pictures of me working at culinary school. Pictures of me standing proudly beside early bakery creations. I kept these because somebody needed to, she said. I spent hours looking through those photographs. For years I believed nobody noticed my efforts. Nobody cared. Yet Grandma Rose had quietly documented every step. That realization brought tears to my eyes. Sometimes support comes from unexpected places. Looking back now, I understand something I could not see during those painful Christmas days. Being excluded from dinner was not the worst thing that happened to me. It was one of the best. Because it forced hidden truths into the open. It forced me to stop chasing validation from people unwilling to provide it. It forced my family to confront realities they had avoided for decades. Most importantly, it forced me to recognize my own value. Today, when customers walk into my bakery, they see the business I built. When employees greet me, they see the leader I became. When friends spend time with me, they see the person I truly am. And that is enough. More than enough. If there is one lesson I learned through all of this, it is that being treated like a servant does not make you one. Being ignored does not make you invisible. Being underestimated does not make you unimportant. Sometimes the people who fail to recognize your worth are simply revealing the limits of their own vision. The best response is not revenge. The best response is building a life so meaningful that their opinion no longer determines your happiness. My parents once treated me like the family maid. Today, I own a thriving company, surround myself with people who respect me, and wake up every morning excited about the future. And for the first time in my life, I no longer need anyone's permission to feel proud of who I am.